Morning campers, Roobosh tea time. I've had some coffee this morning already because I'm on holiday at the moment in Europe, and there was a blackout yesterday. I know this because I was in this town and very hungry, went into a restaurant for lunch. And I said, table, yes, I'd like to eat lunch. And the woman said, no. There's been blackouts in Spain, Portugal, and France. Turns out Belgium as well. Don't want to leave the people from Belgium out, do we? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. A blackout across 4 countries. Interesting. So at the time, the phone was working and didn't last long, but there was a little bit of a 4G signal, so I looked up what was going on, and then all the theories came out about firstly Russian hackers. Of course, it's the Russians. It's always the fucking Russians. Oh, they're amazing, aren't they? They're everywhere. They're responsible for everything. The Russians. What did the Russians ever do for us? Hilarious. So yeah, I discount that one immediately because all the stuff about the Russians is nonsense. They're not the bad guys in any way, shape or form. The bad guys are the EU. The bad guys are the WEF, the WHO. They're the bad guys. Let's just get that clear. It's not the Russians. In fact, the Russians have been working against the bad guys, along with some other people, which I'll get to in a minute. Now, the other theories going around are, it's the pole shift, it's the magnetic... There was one post on X I read this morning saying there was also a power cut in Greece last year that people have forgotten about. And I was like, yeah, that is interesting. I mean, my initial thoughts when I read about it were or heard about it yesterday, were maybe this is the blackout. If you read the Q posts, 10 days of darkness, although it was never spelt darkness, it was... the R and the K were the other way around. But anyway, you know, a lot of people are expecting this 10 days of darkness thing. In fact, I was posting about it 5 or 6 years ago, 7 years ago. You know, and I don't know. Some people say we've had it. I don't actually know. Because, you know, speculation is part of the fun of this whole situation we're in. And you've got to try to have fun in the middle of this situation. And it was a bit nerve-wracking because your brain, loads of things go through your brain. What I knew when the blackout happened yesterday was, oh, there's going to be some panicking, so we need to get out of here. And fortunately, the power had been cut to the car park and the barrier was up, so I had free parking, which was nice. See, there's always a silver lining, isn't there? In the middle of everything, there's always a silver lining. The world can be going to shit, but I'm sat here in the sunshine listening to the birds singing, and I'm just grateful, firstly, to be alive, secondly, to live on this amazing planet. You know, and there's so much information you can get bombarded with. Like there's a character who calls himself Q on X who's showing pictures of portals saying, are you ready to leave yet? And I'm like, well, are we supposed to leave this planet? I'm not sure. It's too beautiful, isn't it? I mean, the only problem with this planet is, I mean, there's been some great stuff coming out recently, like Catherine Austin-Phipps was on Tucker Carlson, and that's going all over the internet at the moment, talking about the 170 deep underground bases that have been built by... You remember when Donald Rumsfeld, the day before 9/11, he goes, $21 trillion, sorry. You might as well ask for a gazillion. I don't know why I'm doing Dr. Evil. That was... that wasn't his line. $1 trillion. My Dr. Evil sounds a bit like Trump sometimes. Don't read into that. Yeah, she's talking about, on Tucker, she's talking about the deep underground military bases. This is disclosure. The disclosure is happening in front of us. The deep underground military bases. It's interesting about Donald Rumsfeld, because he did that speech about the $21 trillion missing from the Pentagon's budget the day before the office where that information was contained was in building 7, which is the 3rd tower that went down on 9/11, which still not enough people know about. I mean, it's the smoking gun for 9/11, for God's sake. Came down at about 5 p.m, I can't remember the exact time, and the BBC and CNN and whatever, but definitely the BBC, reported it had fallen 20 minutes before it actually fell. That is the smoking gun. If you don't know about that, go and look it up. And Rumsfeld, there's an interesting fact about Rumsfeld. I know I'm going off on segues here, but the interesting fact about Rumsfeld is that he was one of the directors of the company that owned the rights to Aspartame, maybe you might know it as, or sucralose, or artificial sweeteners, basically. Apparently, it took 7 attempts for them to get it past the FDA to be approved as a foodstuff. Presumably, they had to kill and bribe members of the FDA to get it approved as a foodstuff. But that's the shit in Coke Zero. That's the shit in Diet Coke. That's the shit in every children's vitamin you'll see in a pharmacy now. And they're putting it in everything, right? And what is aspartame? It is the feces of the genetically modified E. coli bacteria, which was developed as a chemical weapon in the 1960s. Go and look it up. That's what you're consuming when you have artificial sweeteners. Well, specifically aspartame. Most people don't know that. I mean, the amount of fucking X-posts I read from fitness gurus who go, yeah, the way you got to lose weight is swap your normal soda to diet soda. I'm like, are you fucking insane? You're teaching people how to be fit, but you're teaching them to kill themselves at the same time. It's insane. But anyway, that whole calorie deficit thing is bullshit. And I'm currently working on a program to prove this while I'm here. But anyway, that's another aside. So what do I think caused the power blackout over the last 15 hours? Well, this might be controversial, but I am claircognizant, and I do get stuff in my head, and I've been fairly accurate over the years with a lot of it. I'm not saying I'm right about everything. I don't put myself forward as one of those, predictors of the future or anything. Although I am an apocalyptimist, which means we are in the apocalypse, which in Greek means the great revealing, right? Which is another word for the great awakening, really. And as opposed to the great reset, we've got this double-edged sword all the time between being woke and awake, and left and right, and all this nonsense. But I do think that it was a military operation. What kind of military operation would require a complete blackout of 4 countries, including the phones? I mean, last night, my kids couldn't get through to me because the phone was completely gone. There was no phone signal, no 4G, no 5G, I don't even use 5G. No internet, no power, no lights, nothing. It's quite nice, you sit around with candles on, having conversations. It's better than watching shit on the internet like this, isn't it? In fact, what the fuck are you doing watching this? Go and light a candle. And say a prayer. Say a prayer for humanity. Because humanity is at stake. And has been for a very long time. All of our lives, actually. I don't think there's anybody alive today on Earth that hasn't been part of the spiritual war that we're in. Which is kind of consoling in many ways, because we are coming towards a kind of conclusion. And the conclusion is, well, my conclusion about the what do you mean, Mark, by a military op? What do you mean by that? Well, if you close down 4 countries' power and turn off their phones, wouldn't that be the perfect time to go and arrest people that you knew were part of a satanic paedophile ring and part of the problem that we're really facing on Earth, which is connected to these deep underground military bases, which have, are all connected by maglev trains. Go between the UK and America in 10 minutes. Ridiculous, hidden stuff. Big cities underground, huge cities. I was watching one of Trump's videos last night, actually, because it was one of the things I saved on my computer, and it was about building freedom cities in America. I don't know if you ever saw that video. I think it was during his campaign trail for 24, the election in 24. And he was talking about running a competition to build these huge cities, new cities, in this land in America that was not, because the world is not overpopulated. They'd have you believe that, but if you've ever flown across America, you'll see it's empty. I've driven around America in a month. I don't know how many miles we did. It was a lot. Probably 17,000. I don't know. It was a lot of miles. And, most of America is empty. The same as Europe. Fly across Europe, it's fucking empty. There may be a few cities that are overpopulated. They cram you into cities. I could never live in a city ever again. I lived in London for a bit, and I lived in Manchester for 25 years. It's just horrible. Hamster wheel, rat race, nonsense. We've got to get away from that. And we are going to get away from it. And I was listening to a Kim Clement's prophecy yesterday. Kim Clement, if you never looked him up. Trey Smith is a great place to go and look up, interpretations of Kim's prophecies. Kim passed away in 2016, apparently, and but he was prophesying in 2007, 2008 about there being two presidents. That was fascinating because Joe Biden was never president. Joe Biden has not been alive for 5 or 6 years. That whoever was playing the president was not Joe Biden, but he was the pretend president put in place to show us how ridiculous and evil and bad and stupid the Illuminati, WEF, globalist, demonically controlled governments really are or were. In fact, I'd go as far as to say even Keir Starmer. That's not the original. I don't think that's the original. I think that's a guy playing a part to show everybody in the UK how bad things were going to get. And it has to be real. The immigration has to be real. The mass immigration. I've got nothing against immigrants. I'm an immigrant myself. But forced immigration of illegals and, military fighting age men flooding the countries across Europe, including the UK and Ireland. Did you see that thing in Dublin the other day? That was amazing. 100,000 plus people. The tide is turning. The tide is turning. The Irish government, it's theatre. It's real, but it's theatre. And I think that's part of why this blackout happened yesterday across Spain, Portugal, Belgium, and France. And, what a week as well. Trump in a blue suit at the Pope's funeral. It's all comms. And the other thing, I don't know if you saw it, the picture of Trump and Melania holding hands in front of the Last Judgment. That picture was allegedly taken this week at the funeral of the Pope, but it was posted by Mr. Poole in 2022, the same picture. Time travel? Anybody? There's a lot of talk about time travel all over the internet at the moment. I did a video on X, I think 2 years ago, saying, is Donald Trump a time traveller? And it's not as crazy as it sounds when you think about, if you look into the work of Nikola Tesla, who allegedly wrote a paper on time travel in 1921, something like that. And a professor at MIT, or a young student, I can't remember, I'm not exactly sure about the dates or ages, but a very bright person from MIT went to see Tesla to talk about this time travel paper and allegedly worked with him for the next 20 odd years before he died. And that man's name was John G. Trump, Donald Trump's uncle. And it gets weird. I know I've talked about this before, so apologies if you've seen me mention this before, but when you go and look up Ingersoll Lockwood books from the 1890s and 1900s, including The Last President, which talks about a character called Baron von Trump, whose best friend is called Don, who's from New York, who becomes the last president of the United States. It does make you wonder. And this number 88, the Pope was 88. Klaus Schwab, the Nazi bastard, 88. when he resigned last week. If you wanted to donate to Trump's campaign, it was text 880011 or something like that. 88, the speed the DeLorean had to go out to time travel in Back to the Future, a film which featured a character called Biff, based upon Donald Trump. It is a bit weird, isn't it? So my advice is, listen to the birds singing, stare into the sun in the morning if you can. The sun's not bad for you. It's good for you. It's where all life comes from. That's why they're not going to... How are they going to block out the sun just over the UK? Come on. It's all part of the wake up. And it's working. And can't go fast enough for me. But in the meantime, just live in the present moment. Enjoy each day. Be grateful for all the good things in your life. And I'm grateful every day that I'm still here, actually. Because I nearly wasn't a few times. But anyway, whatever you're doing today, God bless you. Keep smiling, have fun, and drink rooibos tea. It's very good, especially with creatine and glycine. All right, see you later.